can music save the planet? I realise that's quite a grand, big opening question for a YouTube video and a podcast, but I think there's a very good chance it can. In fact, a study from Glasgow University found that 82% of music fans want to prevent climate breakdown. That's 10% more than the general population. I don't really know what that says about people that are not necessarily self-defined as music fans and why they don't want to save the planet, but that's a question that we're not going to answer in this episode. Of that 82%, only 3% really knew what they could do as music fans to stop everything going wrong and life on Earth ending. And that is quite a shocking stat, that there's all these different initiatives in the industry. There's some really amazing projects. There's things like Overheated that Billie Eilish runs, which is a climate conference and all the things that she does at her shows. There is EarthPercent, which Brian Eno does, where artists put a percent of their money into climate initiatives. Various different companies, projects, charities, organizations that I've met over the years have been doing amazing things. And one of the driving forces behind the amazing things they're doing is the climate activist, Tori Tsui. She wrote this fantastic book, It's Not Just You. And in this podcast, I got to sit down with her, pick her expert brain to talk about what we can do as music fans, what we can do as humans, really, and some of the complexities of and complicities of the music industry, some of the things that she's done with the artists and activists that she works with. And, well, I'll let her introduce herself. This is Tori on stage before Massive Attack performed to the Co-op Arena in Manchester.
Good evening, Manchester. How are you doing? My name is Tori Tsui, and I am a climate justice activist, and it is such a privilege to be here with you all tonight. Today is World Environment Day, and Massive Attack have endorsed the call for a fossil fuel treaty, a global framework to phase out from coal, oil, and gas. Fossil fuels are weapons of mass destruction, fueling climate breakdown, and also the genocide of Palestinians in Gaza. Right now, my friend and fellow comrade Greta Thunberg is sailing to break the siege in Gaza alongside 11 other activists. It is so important that we show our support to ensure their safety. But the fossil fuel industry does not act in isolation. It is being bankrolled by big financial corporations. Recently, the Co-op Live Arena announced a partnership with Barclays, which is one of the leading perpetrators of the climate crisis. Barclays is providing financial investment to the fossil fuel industry and the arms trade, which is slaughtering innocent Palestinians. It is time that we took a stand against these profiteering industries. It's time that we fight to protect what we love. Our planet, our people, and our homes depend on it. The Fossil Fuel Treaty provides a pathway forward, and so I'm asking each and every single one of you to join us in this fight. Every person who has a voice and a conscience. We demand an end to big profiteering industries. We demand an end to the banks that fund them. We demand an end to the genocide in Gaza. We demand justice now. It is time to have fossil fuel treaty. It's time to free Palestine. Free, free. Free, free. Free, free. Thank you, Manchester, and enjoy the show.
This conversation that you're about to hear takes place backstage at EarthSonic Live in Manchester. It was a reasonably calm, thoughtful conversation, and it was in a room where there wasn't an amazing setup. So there's just video of Tori because it was far too complicated to get myself on camera. If you subscribe to the Drown in Sound YouTube channel, you will be able to find many more videos from my trip to Manchester where I watched people sampling frogs and having a music lesson in how to make music with frog sounds. I saw artists performing underneath the skeletons of whales. I watched an installation with beautiful scenery and lush music with the lights turned out at night in the museum, which was great. And the evening was topped off by a performance or a DJ set from Groove Armada. So that's EarthSonic, but this is my conversation with Tori Tsui, which took place at Manchester Museum, which is a natural history museum in Manchester. Over to me introducing Tori again. Hi, Tori. Welcome to the Drown in Sound podcast. We are in Manchester today, backstage at EarthSonic Live. The last time you were here, you stood on a very big stage in front of a large crowd of Massive Attack fans, having just got Andy Burnham to sign the fossil-free Non-Proliferation treaty. I have to pause saying that because there's a lot of words to get out. What is that and how did that all come about?
Thank you for having me on the podcast, Sean. And yeah, that moment in Manchester was quite an iconic one that happened earlier this year in June, actually, as part of their performance that they were doing at the Co-op Live, which is apparently the most sustainable arena in the UK.
Co-op are the good guys, aren't they?
Yeah, well, you say that, but not to digress, but they were being sponsored by Barclays, which I did call out on stage. But yeah, you mentioned the fossil fuel treaty. They're essentially a global framework to phase out from coal, oil and gas. And they're a complementary agreement to the Paris Agreement, which was trying to keep the world within 1.5 degrees of warming, which, as we know, unfortunately, we have exceeded that. Yeah. And I say we with this kind of, I don't know, I lament slightly because we implies that it's a collective thing, which by all means it is, but actually there are people who are most responsible for us going over 1.5 degrees, and there are industries most responsible, specifically the fossil fuel industry. And fossil fuels, coal, oil and gas account for 86% of all carbon emissions over the past 10 years. And the fossil fuel treaty is essentially trying to get the world to phase out from these addictive materials. The thing that's really frustrating with something like Paris is that it doesn't actually mention coal, oil and gas, despite them being the leading cause of the climate crisis. And as we've seen with the UNFCCC COP30 in Belém, the sort of biggest climate conference each year, there isn't really much of this emphasis on actually phasing out from fossil fuels that they're taking seriously. Firstly, because we keep seeing them host COPs and petrostates. Secondly, because the biggest delegation is always made up of people from the fossil fuel industry. And thirdly, every single time fossil fuel phase out gets kind of mentioned to be implemented in the agreement, it's just shut down. And that's unsurprising because there are so many lobbyists in the room.
So what does it mean for like Andy Burnham? What's he committed to doing? Is he just committed to like not having a coal power station in Manchester?
Well, I mean, if he did open a coal power station, we'd be having some words with him. But to have a city like Manchester, which I think actually has legs to stand on in terms of their commitments to sustainability, specifically if you look around their sort of like commitments to sustainable transport, which I think is very impressive.
They're even called the B Network.
Yeah. It's very green. And, you know, to have someone like Mayor Andy Burnham endorse this, it just goes to show that cities can lead the way to a greener future. And also folks like Massive Attack who really stand committed to lowering their carbon footprint, what with their sort of Act 1.5 initiative and the way that they power their concerts on renewable energy and just generally stand on the right side of history in terms of political views. It was really impactful for us. And, you know, I think endorsements are an interesting thing when it comes to I guess, something like the treaty, because while, you know, we might not think they have material change embedded into the action itself, I do think that having people with large profiles and political power can actually shift the dialogue and get our national governments to act in a way in accordance with something like the Fossil Fuel Treaty. And it's currently endorsed by 18 nation states, so 18 countries around the world. And that endorsement actually does translate into change, because this year is the first year that they're trying to implement, policy changes within their legislation to move away from fossil fuels, which is really exciting. And at the COP, the Fossil Fuel Treaty announced that they would be hosting the first ever fossil fuel phase out conference in Colombia next April.
Should that be a festival? You got to get another F in there.
Oh my gosh, for sure.
Get a massive attack on the bill.
Well, might have to.
Yeah. So in terms of the music industry, like you straddle the climate world, which we all straddle the climate world,
Sure.
and the music industry. And I looked and I couldn't see if lots of music companies had signed the treaty. Like obviously vinyl is made with petrochemicals.
Yeah.
And we've been looking into, within Place of War, the emissions and the energy use of streaming platforms.
Yeah.
And how things like tracks have gone from being, I'm going to glance at Ellie, who's been doing the research, but about 20 megs a song to about 180 megs a song. So the amount of energy you use every time you stream a song is more. And most people aren't really thinking about it. Obviously, individually, we can't make that much difference. But if Apple, Spotify, all of the other platforms thought about the energy use, they could say, well, this is the low. And like, your headphones aren't that good. You don't need to be listening to it at this quality.
Sure.
So I guess the thing that I'm curious about is like the music industry is obviously a huge industry. Yeah. Ships things all around the world. Like hasn't really introduced the new formats of vinyl. Like I know there's like the K-pop for planet movement, and they're really great at like getting K-pop artists to kind of change how they operate. I guess like what sort of things have you seen, and maybe are all the big record companies and streaming services signed up?
Well, the first comment that you kind of made was about industries like the music industry endorsing something like the treaty, and they can technically. I just don't know if many people and many big record labels, touring companies, what have you, know that this is an actual action that they can do. And I think it's because, in part, you know, the name and the word Fossil Fuel Treaty feels quite like an entirely different world that only climate people are part of. But that's not true.
We're in a natural history museum right now. There's dinosaur bones. It feels quite removed from the music industry.
And I think we have a job at the treaty to kind of break down those barriers. But also I think maybe there's a fear of like, oh, if we're committing to this, we'll never use fossil fuels. But that's not what we're saying. I guess what we're saying is that we live in this world that is very reliant on fossil fuels, and you can be part of this transition. So we call it a just transition, meaning that no one gets left behind. It doesn't mean that we turn off the taps and everything ends overnight. That's just not physically possible. So, you know, I would love to see more people in the music industry, more big record labels, touring agencies, what have you, endorse the treaty. In terms of developments that I'm seeing within the music industry, there's so many people working at the intersection of green energy and touring. Touring is very carbon intensive, whether that be through actually putting on the show or getting an artist from A to B. And it's not just the artist, it's their team. The audience as well, their teams, the band members, the equipment that they're shipping out. There's so many different things to factor in. And I think that a lot of the time, it feels like too much of a minefield to even begin to think about how to navigate doing a tour sustainably, that people just don't even try at all. But I have seen some really awesome work being done in that sector. My friend Pauline Bourdon runs a consultancy business called Solophilia, and her specialty is all about green touring, and she's actually someone who wants to say to artists, you're also worried about this being more expensive. It can actually cut costs because you're saving money that would otherwise be spent on fuel. And I think that's a really important thing to remember. Is just because something's seen as more sustainable doesn't inherently mean that it's going to cost you more. Yep. So the work that she does in that is really cool. And also people who are doing research in audience opinions on climate, I think that's really important to shout about, because I think it's like something like over 70% of audience members or people who consume music actually want artists to take action on the climate. And
I think Music Declares Emergency did a survey and said 82% of fans care about the planet and
Yeah,
preserving
that's
life on Earth,
huge.
but only 3% know what to do.
Mm,
And I think that's the big gap.
Yeah.
And that's where artists can come in. And that's why the work
Exactly.
you're doing with EarthPercent and different organizations to give artists the
Give
kind
people
of
the option.
vocabulary and
Yeah.
voice and the
Yeah.
what's some of the things, like you've worked with Billie Eilish and you're in the
Mm.
Overheated documentary she made, and you
Yeah.
do climate conferences with Billie.
Mm.
What is it that you think other artists could learn from her approach?
Well, I think it does need to be said that someone of Billie's size and her fandom and the resources that she has means that she can technically afford to do more than, say, small size artists. And because of the impact that she has, it is worth investing in that as well. So I just want to caveat that. But there are so many artists of her caliber and size who have really influential platforms. And I guess, they should be the ones taking the responsibility to do better, because if someone like Billie can do it, then they don't really have an excuse, I think. I really love how whenever she sells out an arena and she's there for a while, the food goes plant-based. There are water refill points. There's like an eco village that Reverb does, where they have lots of people who are campaigning and canvassing and tabling, talking about the sorts of organizations that they run, whether it's Billie's mum's organization, Support and Feed, which provides plant-based meals to a lot of low-income folks.
Her mum is one of my favorite people to follow on Instagram. She's amazing.
I love Maggie.
My name is Maggie Baird. I am the founder of Support and Feed. I am the mother of Billie Eilish and Phineas, and I'm a citizen of the world and love my neighbors.
Ending hunger and fixing our broken food systems is important to me, and one of the goals of Support and Feed.
The mission of Support and Feed is to address climate change and food insecurity by taking action, moving the world toward a more equitable and sustainable plant-based food system. We first started Support and Feed at the beginning of the COVID lockdown. And because of that, we really thought it was sort of a crisis organization. We would feed a lot of people. But we realized as we feed people these beautiful meals, these soul-enriching meals that are not just feeding them for an hour, but are giving them a respect of a beautiful restaurant-quality meal and nourishing them and helping them understand that plant-based food can be delicious and can make you feel great. We have a consistent presence in 11 cities in the US. We are also involved with other organizations around the world. And a lot of that is thanks to my children. So Billie's tour allowed us to expand, to feed people in the cities on her tour, and to connect with community organizations around the country that she was touring to. We were able later to do that with Paramore, and we've done with other artists.
She's amazing. And I say that with such fondness because she is almost like a mum of the climate movement. She's such a kind person, and just the grit that she has. She's so dedicated to this.
She's really good at explaining things as well. And I think one of the reasons why I was really keen to speak to you is I think everything feels quite complicated.
Yeah.
And I've listened to a few different interviews you've done, and we've spoken a few times, and I feel like you have a clarity to the way you talk about things, and like been doing different research, and you suddenly get into like tons and liters, and emissions suddenly start to become this quite abstract and not everyday and not kind of manageable thing. And I think one of the things, I can't remember exactly what you said in a different interview, but you were talking about the kind of the way in which obviously BP came up with the carbon footprint and how we've kind of individualized and personalized so much of this. But whereas what you're doing with Brian Eno and EarthPercent is very much about, well, you can just give 1% of the money and this will go to organizations that are doing the education, that are like Client Earth taking on the kind of governments and organizations. So I guess rather than needing to turn an entire venue plant-based or run your festival on different fuels, like, do you think artists are aware that there's those simple things that they could be doing? And like, and do you think that stuff is working in terms of systemic change?
So in terms of artists being able to donate money via EarthPercent, for instance.
Like 1%.
Yeah. You know what? I think a lot of artists are probably aware of it. I mean, Brian has such an influential network of artists from his long, illustrious career. And also it's a testament to the community building that he does. He's such an incredible glue who brings people together from all walks of life, not just in music as well. And also, I bumped into some people here who work at Sony Music Publishing, and they are very aware of the work that EarthPercent's doing and EarthSonic as well. And it just goes to show that there are kind of folks who work in impact in the music industry who are trying to push these ideas as well and really trying to bring people on board. So I would say that the awareness is there to a certain degree. Not everyone knows about them, of course, but I think actually the biggest fear that people have is they're afraid of getting it wrong. Now, something like pledging 1% of what you earn to the planet, it feels pretty low risk, but I think actually from a lot of artists that I've met, they do want to be part of the change, but they're almost just like, okay, I can do that, but what more can I do? What feels personal? What feels authentic? And I think there's a large part of the hindrance that revolves around fear and just inauthenticity. Like they really want to do something, but they're just afraid of being called out or being seen as hypocrites. But at this point, I guess my piece of advice to people who feel that way is, you know what? We don't have much time, and we really need everyone to get involved. And you'd be surprised. I think fans are actually more encouraging of doing something than nothing at all. I certainly would be. You know, it's not something that they're most responsible for either. Realistically speaking, music industry is not the most responsible when it comes to climate change. There is an entire industry actively pumping out CO2 into the atmosphere and are lobbying our major conferences and bribing politicians to not enforce climate laws. Like that's pretty scary.
The music industry and music fans do use the energy grid.
They do.
And now that things are streaming, like there's different ways in which people are consuming music. But then most of where we exist online is on platforms. And the enshittification, which is the Cory Doctorow term of just like adding nonsense functionality like the AI DJ on Spotify.
Oh God.
And that is burning up more energy, more water, just to play.
So they are still, they're still part of the solution and the problem. I think perhaps people are aware that there is a footprint attached to their artistry, their name. It's the fear, I think, that they're going to be lumped in with the big bad guys. At least that's what I found from talking to artists. And also this common rhetoric, which is, I don't know what to do. I want to do something, but I don't know what to do. And also the fact that the music space at the moment, it's so hard to survive. Like most artists that I know are barely making ends meet, and they don't want to compromise any chance of being financially sustainable. I mean, just if we're going to talk about, say, something like what was happening in Palestine, what is happening in Palestine, the genocide, so many artists would come up with this, common grievance, which was, I've just been warned or told off or said that I can't speak about this and that I'll get dropped from my record label and things like that. And I can imagine there are probably also similar circumstances to do with being politically vocal about climate change in the fossil fuel industry. Now, the landscape of mainstream campaigning has changed quite a bit with movements coming and going and dying down and rising up. And we've seen that with the climate movement, it's seen to have gone a lot quieter compared to the so-called heydays of 2018 and 2019.
I mean, even at Glastonbury, it was in a heat wave. And I don't think a single I watched a lot and I looked up a load of different things. I don't think I saw any artist talking, joining the dots between, you are out here sweating. And when you go home, you should be taking on the billionaires and the corporations who are treating our planet in the way they are. I guess one conversation we've had before is using a term like climate too complicated because we can't see or feel or touch it. Whereas you can protect nature, you can protect future generations. And there's something, that idea of people wanting to be a protector or someone wants to be a defender. Does that language help, or does it?
It's interesting because we've laid a lot of groundwork for the climate movement. This has been a term that's come up time and time again, especially when talking about, the impacts of climate change or how this energy source impacts the climate, or we can reduce climate emissions. I mean, it's just such a common word in the lexicon of how we talk about environmentalism that I think, a lot of people haven't really given it much thought. But actually, when you talk to people outside of that space, it's not a term that really resonates with them. Like you said, it doesn't feel very tangible. And I think that there's almost a part of it that has become tainted by mainstream media. And like there's such a distinct portrayal of people in the climate movement that it's become something that isn't really cool to talk about or interesting to talk about. Now, obviously, the person who campaigns in the climate in me says, no, guys, we need to care about this. Like, can we just get over ourselves and actually just like stop bickering over terminology? But actually, I think the work that I've done in the music space and meeting people outside of my own bubble has really made me appreciate that sometimes leading with climate isn't necessarily the best thing to get them to act on the climate. I think something that's really helped is thinking about, okay, what is it that they actually care about, and how can I tie climate into that, or show that it is a great magnifier for every single crisis on this planet. I mean, you know, when working on the Together for Palestine concert and kind of attending these sessions with artists who wanted to learn about Palestine, they were really engaged and they felt a duty to talk about it. And I think that's in part to do with pressure, and also because it's horrific what's been happening, and every human should feel compelled to speak out. But something like climate can often be left out of the picture when it comes to such an awful genocide, but it is very much front and center of what is happening. I mean, the military industrial complex is so carbon intensive. We're seeing ecocide be committed. Human rights are a part of climate justice. And so whenever I try and talk to people who are concerned about what's happening to Palestinians, I'm also like, you do realize that the war industrial complex is in bed with the fossil fuel industrial complex. And like actually a really key way to tackle these crises from a unified angle is to think about fossil fuels and to think about the military. And so I do feel like it's about asking them about what's kind of on their mind at the moment and then trying to bring in climate into that.
I mean, even as stuff as basic as the number of festivals cancelled because of extreme weather, both flooding and heat, and then the fires in LA that literally burnt down recording studios early this year. And I think there's a lot of examples of this isn't something in the future.
Right.
This is something that is happening now. And I think one of the things I found when I'd spoken to people, the 1.5 element doesn't quite add up because people are so used to putting the oven on at 180 or 200 and not really knowing the difference. But I don't think they quite
feel so arbitrary to a lot of people. Even to someone like me who's very conscious of like what these things actually entail and mean, 1.5 has been so repeated and hammered into my psyche that it almost starts to lose meaning. And I think it's because something like 1.5 we're not on track for. And secondly, like a lot of people don't really seem to understand what that entails. What does that actually result in? What will that look like? What number of floods? What number of wildfires? I think people need to see something tangible as opposed to just this like slightly obscure number that doesn't really hold much personal meaning to people. And I think that's also part of it. It's like, in order to really transform people's behavior and communicate a crisis of this scale, it has to feel personal. And numbers just don't really cut it for a lot of people.
Hi there, it's Emma here. I'm gatecrashing the podcast to quickly tell you about the Drowned in Sound newsletter. Every Wednesday, I invite myself into your inbox, with permission, of course, to share opinion writing and resources, tell you about cool things that you should be involved in within the world of music, activism, etc. I also bring track of the week and a little bit of hopeful news for you, because we all know that the news cycle can be grim at the best of times. Drowned in Sound newsletter every Wednesday in your inbox. Sign up now.
You've spoken quite a bit about how intersectional, like, and literally we're just talking about it there, like with wars and military. Like, if it was an intersection, a junction, which I like, what other things would be at that crossroads?
At the intersection between military and fossil fuels.
And just like the climate movement, I feel like it's the inequality is a huge one.
Everything. I mean, gender inequality, racism, disability justice as well, injustice rather, just general human rights.
Yeah.
Every single struggle and form of oppression enacted on humans and non-human animal others intersects with climate change. I can't name a single thing that isn't either exacerbated by or, directly impacting the climate.
Do you think that the world that we're living in right now, that music has really found its place in this space? Like, for instance, I can't think of many records that's theme is what you can do or what is happening. Like, there's lots of songs that, like the Featuring Nature project that Soundsright are doing, where you can credit nature.
Sure.
Like, it's interesting there's not like a big concept album, like, but then again, you go through like Kate Bush's catalogue.
Yeah.
There's all songs about nature, and amongst that, Bjork's catalogue is full of. But I just wonder whether it feels like often we have these big political moments and there's like a song that you can attach to it, or an album, or a whole series of events. Do you feel like there's been that same kind of impetus?
Not for a while. I don't feel like that's been the case for a while. I think if you look at the music that kind of gets out there and that gets streamed, so much of it has been deeply influenced by the social media landscape, and it's all about what hook sounds catchy and what can be attached to a trend, and it just all feels like deeply commodified. And I think that almost distracts us from the quote unquote real world, because we're seriously living in like this social media landscape where people are just trying to get something viral as opposed to create change and meaning. I think that's, deeply influenced the landscape of music. I also think that, while music is inherently political, I often remark that apolitical music is also a political stance.
Yeah.
It's a reflection of the times that we live in. And I think that in a world that's so fraught with tension and politicization, people choosing to make music that is inherently apolitical is a reflection of the fact that it's seen as too contentious to be political. So I think there is a real lack of, willingness to make this sort of music. And also, if you look at what sells, it's not political music.
And I think it's also like, you consider the darkness, like it's not a cheery topic to talk about. And you just think that it's ripe for like some beautiful melancholic record. Like, I know The Cure have sort of touched on it, and it's, I don't know, it just seems fascinating to me that of all the topics that songs are written about, and it's like you can't name like a big concept album that's based around all of this. Like, I know that and Shikari have written songs, but they're not like daytime Radio 1 bangers, are they?
I think there's almost this feeling that music is an escape for a lot of people. And when you have the world as it is constantly shoved down your throat, probably the last thing you want to do is put your headphones on and listen to something that reminds you of how grim things are.
Obviously, people are doing that with this podcast.
I mean, I do this every single day. I can't switch off.
I almost feel guilty asking you these questions, because I know how, like, you've written a lot about eco-anxiety and eco-survivalism, as you've been talking about it more recently. And like, I know the number of days I wake up and I'm like, oh, The Guardian have stuck out a news story at 1 a.m. that just seems really bleak about the future of life on Earth.
I know.
And then by 9 a.m. it's not even on their homepage anymore.
I know. It's so scary, isn't it? It's something that I've been really conscious of lately, that the consumption of so-called negative news, which you might also be able to substitute negative for realistic. And I have found that kind of by moving out of solely climate related spaces, I've tried to get into the heads of everyday people who don't engage with this kind of stuff. And I can understand why. I think that's one of our greatest challenges is to think like other people who don't seem to be engaged with this. And I don't think it's that they don't care. It's just really hard to care about stuff when you're caring about a million and one other things that kind of fundamentally rely on you trying to put food on the table, provide for other people, or, you know, take care of yourself first and foremost in a really short window of time. Whereas something like climate change, while it is an existential threat to people right now and has impacted people in the past as well, it doesn't necessarily feel like it's on a lot of people's doorsteps. And I feel like maybe that feeling that it's not an urgent thing, even though it very much is, stops them from feeling invested in the fight.
And do you think some of that is also because the biggest extractors and the biggest polluters are such big, powerful organizations, even and countries?
Yeah.
That, like, I think it's interesting listening to Zach Polanski. Like, I don't think I've really heard him talk about the environment or climate in most of the last few months. I've heard him talk a lot about inequality and billionaires.
Yeah.
And obviously there was an amazing clip of Billie recently speaking right to Mark Zuckerberg's face about how billionaires should be using their wealth.
Yeah.
We're in a time right now where the world is really, really bad and really dark, and people need empathy and help more than kind of ever, especially in our country. And I'd say if you have money, it would be great to use it for good things and maybe give it to some people that need it. And love you all, but there's a few people in here that have a lot more money than me. And if you're a billionaire, why are you a billionaire? No hate, but yeah, give your money away, shorties. Love you guys. Thank you so much.
And I wonder whether a lot of this and a lot of the intersectional topics, they're often entire media organizations set up by people with all their money in fossil fuel.
Yep.
Like, I think
it's all connected.
The like DSMOG did a study, and I think there's something like 65% of stories in The Sun were like climate denial rather than and it's like Rupert Murdoch has probably got loads of money.
Exactly. I mean, you know, the media is also in bed with oil and gas, and it's not surprising that the narratives that they're putting out there are really not in favor of climate action. And when you have something like that you're up against, the billionaires, whether it be billionaires in media or tech or, you know, in politics, it makes you feel really powerless. And I can see that a lot of people have become deeply disillusioned and very depressed and feeling like there is no hope, there is nothing that we can do. At the same time, I do feel like when things get so bad, there is this inevitability that actually the entire world is impacted. And so there is no other choice but to revolt. And I am starting to see things like that bubble to the surface. And I do feel like you were talking about, you know, Zach Polanski's messaging campaign not mentioning climate. I think it's very smart to talk about the 1%. I think that is deeply intentional and is a really clever unifying tactic, because there are so much more of us than of them. And the billionaires are the ones who are driving us off the cliff edge as well. Their financial investments, assets, their wealth as a whole is directly tied to some of the most polluting industries on the planet. So by saying we need to either tax the super rich or, you know, hold them to account, that's climate action in and of itself. We don't have to label it as such. And the interesting thing is that when you talk to so-called everyday people who might seem against the climate movement, the people who criticize like Just Stop Oil activists for throwing soup, you actually talk to them, they care about exactly the same things that we do. They want a good life for themselves and their families. A lot of them have unfortunately been preyed upon by the super rich, fed narratives, and been manipulated and pitted against other minorities, thinking that this is the way out. Scapegoating is such a powerful tactic and tool. So I'm not surprised that, unfortunately, a lot of very vulnerable people have been manipulated and have been sort of, you know, commandeered to campaign and fight against people who are enduring just as bad hardships as them. It's sad. It's very sad. But, you know, I think that tactic of kind of unifying against the super rich is probably our best chance at this rate.
What are the solutions that the average person listening to this can actually do? Like,
Sure.
And I was thinking about that when I was going through the questions. It's like, we've been tackling Spotify's royalties for ages. We've just been going after like the amount of people that have left Spotify now that they are running ICE adverts and putting their money into AI war drones. And suddenly artists are engaging. They're like, the No Music for Genocide campaign, artists are engaging. Artists that have been completely silent for the last 3 years have all been engaging. So I think that, like you said, like it does feel like the simmering is now starting to come to the boil.
Yeah.
We're going to do a series in January about music and resilience. And I'd be interested for you and for other people you know, the role that music plays in resilience, in finding the space that you do need to escape.
Sure.
Like, how important a role does music play for you?
Oh my gosh. I mean, it's like asking me how important oxygen is to my livelihood. Music is so important. I feel like not only from a point of escapism, but just joy and bringing people together. Everyone knows that feeling of like being in a room full of people who are all there to see this one artist, and there's that one song that everyone knows and they feel so connected and so moved. And for me, that translates even further when I think about artists who are taking a stand for the world that I want to live in. I remember when Billie came to the UK, I think it was 2 summers ago now, and she did like this really small surprise set at the Electric Ballroom in Camden. And she was like, oh my God, I haven't done a small show in years, because it's been 10 years since Ocean Eyes came out, and that's kind of what propelled her to stardom at 13.
And also because of lockdown, she sort of bypassed playing a lot of those smaller shows. She got so big so quickly.
Yeah, exactly. And she was doing this really small show, and all of the fans in the audience were just mesmerized, you know, and just so entranced by her every word and everything that she was saying. And I was like, that's what it's about. Like, that's how you use your fandom responsibly, because there are so many people who would literally do anything for the artists that they love. And I'm like, how great is it that we have an artist who really stands on the right side of history and really tries to use their platform in and outside of their music. So I remember that feeling, and I remember thinking, oh yeah, this is the sector I want to work in, because just look how compelled and moved these people are. And I felt that as a fan of Billie's and also a consumer of music, like also being neurodivergent, so much of the way that music moves through me is deeply, deeply emotional and powerful. And it can literally be the difference between me having a bad day and having a great day, or me feeling like kind of a bit numb and then feel so emotional and compelled and compassionate about the piece that I'm listening to. So yeah, music is a huge part of my life. It always has been. And that's a really funny thing is, I remember when I was younger and I grew up in Hong Kong, I kind of started doing like freelance work for this one production company that would bring indie acts to East and Southeast Asia. And I remember thinking at that point, I want to work in music. And then that kind of fell to the sidelines. And I was like, well, I'm working climate now. I don't know if that's ever a thing that can combine. And lo and behold, here I am. I'm like, oh, this feels like coming back home to myself in a weird way.
That really leads into my next question, because here we are, we're at EarthSonic Live. It's a takeover of the Natural History Museum in Manchester, the Manchester Museum. And music is right at the core of what this event is. And I'm curious, like you've been on stage, you've spoken at a couple of things today. Like events like this are kind of rare, where it's like climate talks and live performances underneath the skeleton of a whale. Do you think that there should be more of that, like at festivals and
100%.
like, and all the different, like, and also you were saying earlier about how the joy of music when you were talking, like how the like parties are much better. Like at some of the climate events, are they needing DJs and bands?
They really are. They really are. A good friend of mine and fellow climate activist Dominique Palmer always says, I don't want to be part of your revolution if I can't dance. And I really love that saying, because I think that taps into the necessity of joy, not only as, you know, a motivator to continue campaigning, but just part of our humanity. And I think that one of the biggest shortcomings of large movements is that they don't have enough street parties. They don't have enough festivals and music and dance and art imbued into their existence. And I think that's a huge disservice because it's just a great unifier. It's a great way of bringing people together. It makes people feel. And I think feeling is what motivates change. And without care and connection, why bother? You know? So music for me is everything. And I think going down this route of bringing music and climate action together, and it doesn't even have to just be climate action as it's colloquially known, is something that makes me feel at home, because I felt for so long that these worlds didn't intersect or that they didn't belong together. And now that I get to do this kind of work, I'm like, oh, yeah, this is possible. This is where real change for me begins.
So I'll do very quick fire, final 2 questions. One, carbon credits.
Oh, God.
A bit of a nonsense from what I can tell.
Yeah.
There was a study The Guardian did. 94% of rainforest carbon credits certified by Vera. They're the world's leading certifier.
Yeah.
Are what called phantom credits. They don't represent real climate benefits. Yet Spotify, Shell, Disney, and all these people buy them. Like
greenwashing.
And I think like Taylor Swift bought loads of carbon credits to offset her tour. And like, what should people be doing instead? I mean, obviously not using carbon in the first place, I'm guessing. But
I mean, I liken carbon credits to a get out of jail free card. It doesn't actually mean that you haven't committed the felony that has put you in jail in the first place. It doesn't erase your past. I think that so much of what is out there, technological solutions, tree planting schemes.
I was waiting for you to suddenly start talking about techno then.
Oh, yeah, techno. It's all bogus. I mean, and it's just a form of like green colonialism, because what you find is it's often the richest countries and people who have historically committed oppression against people in the global south who are, say, buying up pieces of their land to plant non-native trees on land where those things won't thrive and they'll just die. I mean, it's just an excuse for them to keep polluting as normal, but that's not actually getting to the crux of the matter. It's not a solution. It's just like the equivalent of, you know, mopping up the floor when the bath is overflowing instead of turning it off at the taps.
It seems a bit like going into confession booth. It's like you're not going to undo your crime by confessing to it.
Yeah, and also what it does is it creates a social license for these big polluters to just keep doing business as usual. So much of the investment that fossil fuel companies make into so-called green solutions or these technological solutions, like, oh gosh, you know, whether it's carbon sequestration and absorbing carbon from the atmosphere, they're not actually doing it for the benefit of the planet. They're doing it to buy themselves more time and to make themselves seem more noble, and that they're on the right side of the transition when they're not, because they're not investing in renewables, and they invest in like these green energy solutions that actually they end up withdrawing from. I think like Shell invested in this like algae energy solution, and then they pulled all their funding out of it because it just was no longer relevant to them. So yeah, I'm not a fan of these kinds of things.
So if music fans are listening to this, are musicians, and they want to improve parts of the music ecosystem and also use music to speak either as an example or as a tool to kind of hold the rest of the world accountable, what does the transition look like? I mean, we've got a madman in as a president in America is talking about windmills. But like I've seen like certain days in Scotland, like completely powered by wind.
Yeah.
Like,
so cool.
And it's like, you see these like tidal projects and like that's energy all day, every day. The tide goes in and out every day. You're going to get energy from there. Like what should people be pushing for? Because obviously data centers are a big issue. Like they use a lot of water.
Sure.
In Ireland, they've, because it's a tax haven for a lot of companies, they were using up more energy than all of the homes in some areas. And it's like, you'd imagine those very activated political voices in the music scene in Ireland would start to speak up about that. Like, what should people be speaking up for? I guess that's probably, I know that's a very big question.
Yeah.
It's a lot.
I mean, it kind of goes back to what we were speaking about before, which is what's personal to you. Is there a particular issue that you're very passionate about and care a lot about, and how do you kind of tie that into the broader issues that exist within society? That's what I would kind of say to people working in music, whether that's, I want to protect this certain species that I really care about, or this particular habitat, or I absolutely hate the impacts of environmental racism on a community I grew up in, or, the rise of authoritarianism and fascism is deeply impacting my community. I want to campaign against that. It's all connected. And I think that the sooner we realize that everything is connected, I'm less inclined to tell people what to campaign for. Instead, just ask them to campaign about something that feeds into the wider issues in society. I would also, because I'm biased, I obviously work in the climate space, I would tell people to endorse the fossil fuel treaty. I genuinely think that's our best way out of this mess. Like, I'm not even just saying that because I work with them. There is a reason I work with them, because I genuinely believe in what they're doing, and I feel
But not short of offers of people that want to work with you.
Yeah. I mean, it's a phenomenal solution, and it's grounded in justice, and it is deeply intersectional, and it has shown that we can work with the arts. I mean, we've worked with Massive Attack. We can work with so many other artists, big or small, who want to create that change. I mean, we literally have our own musical project called This Is Our Home Project, and they're from small island states in the Pacific, and they are literally scouted by Chris Martin, because they came to Brian Eno's studio one day. Brian sent a video of them to Chris Martin, and then they toured all around Australia and New Zealand with Chris, kind of promoting their music, which is rooted in storytelling and being one with the environments that they grew up in, about preserving culture and heritage. And it just goes to show it can be done. So yeah, I just tell people to endorse the fossil fuel treaty and work with us, basically.
It can be done.
It can be done. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Feels like the final word.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
If people want to follow you and your Oracle-like knowledge, whereabouts would you recommend they go?
Well, I guess you could say I'm most active on Instagram at Tori Tsui. So that's TORITSUI _. I always forget there's an underscore. I don't know why, because at Tori Tsui doesn't even exist as a username, but I can't change it. So I have a random underscore. But I would also implore people to follow at Fossil Fuel Treaty, because there's some really, really important climate information we share, and also campaigns. And yeah, it's, for lack of a better word, gives you a lot of hope.
Hope. That's the last word.
Yeah.